Welcome to Zoom Lunch with the Principal, where today we'll be talking about study skills and especially focusing on helping your child to work smarter, not necessarily longer. Our goal today is to focus on different study techniques that can be used for each child. Now, every child is going to be a little different. Even if you have two siblings, they can be very different, and some children are going to learn different than the way that you learned. So, our goal today is to give you lots of different ideas that you can try out and figure out which ones will work best for your child. Today we're going to talk about the three main learning styles. The first one being visual. About 40 to 65% of people are actually visual learners and learn best that way. I myself am personally one of those. A good example, when I was going to school, I could recall information for a test by seeing where the teacher wrote it on the board. I would kind of visualize that or visualize where it was written in the textbook. I was really diligent about taking notes during class. And this is one way that I would be able to retain the material because I could recall back where I had written it on my notebook page in my notes. Now, my daughter, on the other hand, is an auditory learner. We discovered this when she was quite young, as we were going on a vacation to San Diego, and we're going to visit the aircraft carrier there. And being good parents like we are, we decided that we would check out a video from the library to kind of do a little education before we went. So was focused more on my son, who was about 12 or 13 at the time, so he could get an idea of what we were visiting and going to see on our vacation. My daughter was 5 years old and in kindergarten, and they both watched the video. And then when we went on vacation and were on the aircraft carrier and they were talking about the different red shirts and blue shirts and the different jobs that people would do on the aircraft carrier, all of a sudden my daughter was starting to answer all the questions, and I heard in my head the actual wording from the video coming back out of her mouth. It made us quite famous on the aircraft carrier, as all the veterans who were guides there would kind of follow us around and ask her questions that she would again just repeat back straight what she'd heard from the video. So it was a fun experience, but definitely helped us to realize that she was an auditory learner, and kind of ties in the fact that she's very much a musician now as well. Now, the least popular is the kinesthetic learners, and most difficult to kind of work with, but these are people basically who like to do things with their hands, especially, and that's how they learn, more by doing, and very hands-on active. My son is one of these. Learned this when he was quite young, when he was very good at hands-on puzzles. He could figure them out quicker than anybody else, was very good with putting together connects, Legos, things like that. When he got into junior high, he actually took apart our whole PlayStation video game that was not working at the time. And I came home to find it spread out in a million pieces all over our kitchen table. Tried to explain to him that that was never going to work again after he had completely taken it apart. He told me no, he'd figured out what was wrong. There was a magnet missing, and he had taken one from our refrigerator, and he was now going to put the whole thing back together. Needless to say, the thing did work for another 3 years or so before kind of having a tough time again and needing to be replaced. But taught me that, yes, he was very good with his hands, and he was a very much kinesthetic learner. Now, again, this is the smallest category, but when we're talking about a lot of you with younger children, most children actually start off as kinesthetic learners. So it's not unusual to have a very high percentage in kindergarten. Almost all kindergartners are kinesthetic learners. So you want to keep that in mind when you're working with the very young children. A lot of children won't kind of fall into their natural ongoing learning style and probably until second or third grade. So kind of keep that in mind, because just because your kindergartner is a kinesthetic learner It does not mean that that will continue on as they get a little older. I think a good way to kind of think back on learning styles and what you may have been when you were in school is to kind of think of spelling bees. Most of us at some point were maybe not in a real one like we do at Pearl, but in the classroom there was some kind of spelling bee your teacher probably did with you. And just try to think of how you recalled those words best when you were in that situation under pressure. Were you a visual learner who kind of would see the word in your head, or would you be somebody who wants to actually write it down to tell if you spelled it correctly? This was definitely me. The auditory people, this would be people who kind of would say the word over and over again as you were practicing, and probably wanting to find a rhythm as you said the word out loud. That would be a good kind of key into auditory, though. You know, we all remember MISSISSIPPI. We kind of all did that one auditory wise with the rhythm, but kind of doing a lot of spelling words that way would make it very auditory. And some of your children will find this helpful as you study spelling with them. The kinesthetic learners are the ones, and sometimes you even see these the ones who write it in the air because they kind of want to go through the motions or kind of tracing it in the air to kind of feel what that word looked like. For instance, if you were making a flashcard for the word inflation, one of our 5th grade history vocab words, you could write the word inflation inside kind of like a rectangle that looks like a dollar bill, and maybe make the F into an arrow going up because the prices were going up. Some kind of idea like that. The more creative and wild they actually get, the better it's going to actually work for you. And if your child's not really an artist, you can also create these pictures in your head. You don't necessarily even have to write them down, but it's a great way for our visual learners to work on both spelling and vocabulary words. Now, as we mentioned, most of our younger learners are kinesthetic learners. So spelling is definitely something we want to come up with some good hands-on ideas, which you can see here, a long list of really fun or different ideas, everything from using Scrabble letters to spell words to dried beans, you know, keeping it a little more hands-on than having them drudge through kind of writing it over and over again. You know, spelling flashcards, if those work, you know, go for it. It's okay, but some children are going to need a little more creative ideas to help them. I love this one with the Lego letters. You can kind of see where it says spelling, and she kind of gives some ideas on here for how to create kind of Lego spelling. You can look that up on thisreadingmama.com. But you can kind of see she uses different shapes to kind of show the tall letters as well as the ones that dip down with tails. This really helps too, even with those who are a little more visual, because they can kind of see the shape of the word. Shaving cream is always a lot of fun. They did this one kind of straight on the table in the picture. I would, you know, because I was a mom who liked to keep things clean and neat, I think I'd probably use a large cookie sheet just to make cleanup a lot easier because I could throw it in the dishwasher. But it's fun to be able to write those words in there, and then they just smear it out and write the next word. Makes it a little more fun than just writing it on paper. Down here, I really like this. I haven't seen this one before, but the paint in a bag, you can actually find out how to make that online. But basically, it involves just putting paint in a bag and squeezing out the air so that they can use a Q-tip to write on it and be able to see the words there. Sidewalk chalk is always a fun one outside. But if you want to make it a little more active than actually just writing, you can create a grid like in this picture here. And the child actually has to jump from letter to letter as they spell out their spelling words. A little more fun and active for our kinesthetic learners.
Sacramento, California, Sacramento, California, Phoenix, Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Austin, Texas, Austin, Texas.
Next, we're going to look at some ideas for some of our older students as they're learning the presidents and states and capitals. This is something we focus a little more on 5th grade, but these ideas can tie over to other subjects, as well as the fact I think it's always a good idea, if you can, to help your child by giving them a chance to memorize some of these things ahead of time. So if you have a 3rd or 4th grader headed into 5th grade, if they come in already knowing all their states and capitals, it works as a really great confidence booster for them coming in. So a couple of ideas here. We'll start with auditory. One is to record your voice. The idea being you'd say something like Texas, and then leave a pause on the recording so that your student can answer back Austin. Same thing works for spelling. You can say your spelling words this way in a recording. Just record it on your phone. And then as you're in the car or practicing somewhere, you can just play the recording and leave a pause for the student to spell it back. This works great for some of our students, especially who have a little ways to travel to school and you want to study those spelling words, because we definitely don't want parents looking at the list while you're driving. Not a good idea for safety reasons, obviously. So if you have that recording, just connect to your Bluetooth on your car radio and boom, you can study spelling words without having to look at that list. Another great way is to use songs. There's a lot of good ones out there. You can just look on Amazon. You can buy ones that you can download. Kathy Troxel has one of my favorite ones for the states and capitals. I like how she always gives them time to repeat it back within the song. So the idea being you listen to her sing it and then you sing back the answer again. Helps the kids to, and it has a little bit more of a rhythm than some of them I've heard. It's a little more creative. She also does them in the order of the borders of the United States so that it helps them memorize the locations of the state as well. There's a little video clip on this slide if you want to press that and listen to a clip from one. We also have our kinesthetic learners. Great way for this one is some of those state puzzle maps that you can buy have the pictures on them as well to kind of help them remember the capitals and things, but they get to actually physically put together a map of the United States. I like the ones that kind of have the states themselves in their shapes because that helps them to be able to see the shapes. A great app, I know we're trying, especially right now, to kind of keep the kids off screens more, but I have to say I love the Stack the States app. They actually have a version 2 out now. That's a little more updated. I've played the classic one myself just to kind of test it out in the past and really liked it. It helps with states and capitals as well as the location of the states. Even does abbreviations, lots of fun quizzes and things. Then they get to collect states, and they also have, especially for our kinesthetic type, kind of looking visually at stacking up the states so that your Tower of States doesn't tip over. I thought that was kind of an extra little challenge I liked and thought it was a lot of fun. Available both on Android and for iPhones or iPads, and only costs about $3, so well worth your money if your child likes that. For our visual learners, this is just a great system for memorizing a lot of different things. The first book I'm going to talk a little bit about is Yo Millard Fillmore. This is a picture cartoon style book that supposedly if you do this, you can memorize all the presidents in order in 20 minutes. Back when I used to teach 5th grade, I actually had some students who were able to do that and in about 20 minutes. Pretty amazing kind of visual memorization techniques, but you can see here from the pictures, We have a ton of laundry that's being washed on the White House lawn for Washington, for washing a ton of laundry. Kind of get the connection there. In the next picture, we're kind of building upon the first picture. So Washington's our first president. Adam is our second president. So you'll see the atoms floating in the washing machine. So then going on to our third president, who was Jefferson, you'll see that those atoms are being cooked up by the chef's son. So we're kind of taking each element to the next picture to help us create a sequence. The next one, you'll see under the flames of where the chef's son is cooking, we have a mad son who is heating up that fire for Madison. And we just learned the first 4 presidents in order. They have another great book called Yo Sacramento, which does the same kind of idea for states and capitals. So you'll see in this sample picture, we have a picture of Main Street for the state of Maine, and there is a gust of wind blowing on Main Street. So Augusta being the capital of Maine. And it does that for all the states and capitals. But these kinds of drawing techniques, again, can be used for lots of different ideas of things that you need to memorize. And these books are actually great, can be available on Amazon if your child is kind of into that, only about $10. Another thing at Pearl that you need to kind of memorize, a very fundamental thing for math across the board. We do times tests, 1st grade through 5th grade, starting off with some addition and subtraction, later on moving into multiplication and division, building upon that each year. Some great ideas to try to help your child in the different learning styles we've talked about to be able to memorize those. One is to capitalize upon songs for our auditory people. There's lots of them out there that you can buy on the Math Facts. I grew up on Schoolhouse Rock, still remember some of those multiplication ones, but they have those for each of the different times tables, and you can buy a DVD that has all of them in one. It actually has not just the music, but also visuals to go along with that, which is nice. And some of the kids are a little more into the modern raps, which they have those out there as well. Another technique is to have them just say them out loud. You can do the same kind of idea we talked about before with recording those voice tracks for that. Not some visual ideas, kind of capitalizing again upon some of those crazy picture story type ideas. You'll see a couple of books here that do this. I don't know that too many children would really go through the whole system of memorizing all their times tables using pictures like this. But if they do, great. Whatever works for your child. But I think something like this is very valuable for those ones that you kind of get stuck on. I know to me, it was 6 times 7, it was 42, and 6 times 8 was 48. For whatever reason, I would often get those mixed up. So pictures like this probably would have been a big help to me to kind of keep those straight. So kind of a fun way to do it. You'll see the one up there with 8 times 8 with the 2 snowmen equals 64. And it says sticks 6 are for the fire. So you can kind of get that idea in there of kind of the way they work with these little clever ideas in their pictures. You can obviously always come up with your own. Another good visual, especially for our younger students who are working on their addition subtraction facts, is using something we call a 10 frame. This is really nice because it keeps consistent and they can kind of see the visual of where the numbers fall so that they kind of see, oh, that's a 9 because there's just one missing. It's just a quicker way to kind of see it rather than obviously using the fingers, but they can kind of create the 10 frame in their mind is obviously where we want it to be able to get it to, so that when they put the fill up the different blocks, whether it would be with circles or whatever it is, they can kind of see the numbers visually to see that 7 plus 2 equals 9. Or if you were doing 5 plus 2, you would see, oh yeah, that's 7 because 5 takes up the first row and then 2 for the next one. It's just another way of looking at it. Works great for some kids, others not. So just kind of give it a try. There's tons of good finger tricks out there for learning the multiplication facts. 9 being my favorite, which you'll see a picture there of the idea behind using the finger tricks for the 9. You can Google that. There's actually a really great way for those who kind of take off with this finger idea. I used to use with some of my 5th graders who are really struggling. You can actually do the 6 through your 10s using a method with your fingers. You can Google that, or sometime if you're around school, be happy to show you how to do that. Most of my 5th graders, when I used to teach them this in 4th or 5th grade, kind of felt it was a little too much work to actually use their fingers to do it. But if you have somebody who's really into that and struggling, it's a great other technique to try. I always had 1 or 2 students each year that would really pick that up and find it useful. Thanks for attending this week's presentation. Upcoming, we have Internet Safety with Mr. Moore this time, IT Director, and he will be talking about some things that you can do, especially in this day and age with the kids spending so much time on the computer, ways that we can keep them safe. Look forward to hearing from you then. Thanks.